Let me tell you a story. This story is about a man, an acorn, and a land called Albion. So let's start at the beginning. Peter Molyneux didn't just make games, he sold dreams. Born in Guildford, England, he co-founded Bullfrog Productions in 1987 with Les Edgar. In the late 80s and 90s, Bullfrog was a powerhouse of creativity. They released Populous in 1989, the original God game where you literally raised civilizations from nothing. Then there was Dungeon Keeper, a game where you played the bad guy, slapping your minions to work while laughing at the heroes trying to invade your dungeon. Theme Park, Syndicate, Magic Carpet. Bullfrog under Molyneux basically invented the sim with a twist genre. Molyneux's work at Bullfrog was defined by disruptive ideas. But after Electronic Arts acquired Bullfrog in 1995, Molyneux felt creatively stifled. He wanted freedom, so in July of 1997, he left to form Lionhead Studios with Mark Webley, Tim Rance, and Steve Jackson. Now, Lionhead's first game, Black and White, was the embodiment of Molyneux's philosophy. It was a god game where you controlled a giant, AI-driven creature that learned from your actions. If you patted it for eating villagers, it kept eating them. It was revolutionary, messy, and deeply ambitious. It sold millions and cemented Molyneux's reputation as a visionary. But it also established a pattern, massive promises, delays, and a final product that, while great, was usually a fraction of what it was originally described as. This was the context in which the development of Fable began. Fable didn't actually start at Lionhead proper. Founded in '97 as a breakaway from Bullfrog, they ran a satellite studio experiment. One of those satellites, Big Blue Box Studios. Two brothers, Simon and Danae Carter, fresh from Bullfrog, cooking up something called Project Ego in a tiny office. The Carter brothers had a vision for a revolutionary RPG, something they originally called Wishworld. Early design documents for Wishworld show a magical combat game set in a wizard's university with dynamic terrain manipulation. It was chaotic, but it contained the DNA of Fable. It was meant for Dreamcast at first, then Xbox when Sega bailed. Microsoft loved the pitch. They funded it, published it, and when the game exploded, Microsoft made their move. It was the fastest-selling Xbox title at the time, over 50 awards. Meanwhile, Lionhead itself was expanding too fast. Riding the success of Black and White, the company grew from a small team to over 200 staff, burning through cash at an alarming rate. Black and White 2 and the movies were in development, but progress was slow. And by 2004, despite Fable's impending release, Lionhead was facing financial instability. Eventually, the strain became too much. In 2006, after a restructuring that saw 85 staff laid off, Microsoft acquired Lionhead Studios for a sum believed to be around $40 million. It was a rescue deal as much as an acquisition. The marketing for Fable was legendary. Molyneux went on stage and told gamers that you could be anything. He spoke of a world where your character aged visibly, where scars told the story of your battles, and where morality wasn't just a meter, it meant physical transformation. When Fable finally released in September of 2004 for the original Xbox, it sold over 2 million copies in the first month. And the core promise that morality changes you was there. The game introduced a system that for 2004 felt incredibly responsive. If you ate too much, you got fat. If you used different types of weapons, it changed your body structure. But the big one was good versus evil. Saving townsfolk and showing mercy gave you a halo, blue eyes, and butterflies fluttering around you. Murdering innocents and exploiting villagers gave you pale skin, red eyes, and eventually horns. This wasn't just cosmetic, NPCs reacted to you as well. Children would run away screaming from a villain, while adults would cheer a hero. The gameplay loop of choose a weapon, fight bandits, buy property, get married, this was addictive. Even as Fable took shape, features were removed due to the Xbox's hardware limitations. You were originally supposed to be able to buy a boat and travel to different islands. You were supposed to be able to have children who would inherit your traits. And perhaps the most infamous cut feature is the acorn. Molyneux famously promised that if you planted an acorn at the start of the game, you would return later to find a fully grown tree that you could use for cover or shade. It became a shorthand for overpromising. In fact, the developers at Big Blue Box had to remove the feature because the original Xbox couldn't handle the memory requirements of tracking that specific tree over the entire timeline. Now, before we talk about how the game was expanded and remastered, we need to actually sit down with the hardware and ask, how did this thing feel to play? So let's start with the controller, because this is where the original Fable reveals its age, but also its intelligence. The original Xbox controller wasn't exactly built for nuanced RPG mechanics. Yet Lionhead and Big Blue Box managed to map a surprisingly complex system into a limited button set. The combat was built around a single contextual button, the X button. Tap it with your sword drawn, you slash. Pull the trigger to aim your bow or spell, and fire with the same button. It was elegant in its simplicity. Now, when we talk about the environments, Albion in the original Fable was marketed as this sprawling open world. In reality, it was a series of interconnected corridors. Look at Greatwood. It feels like a forest, but it's really a winding path with trees placed on either side. The illusion is effective, but the moment you step off the path, you hit invisible walls. This isn't necessarily a criticism. Hardware limitations force this design, and the game benefits from a tight, curated pacing. You're never lost, and the world feels handcrafted rather than procedurally generated. However, the environmental storytelling is where the game shines. Every region tells a micro-story. Darkwood is oppressive not just because of the enemies, but because the lighting shifts to a sickly green, and the ambient sound design, the distant howls, the crunch of leaves, creates a genuine tension. Bowerstone South feels like a bustling market town because NPCs have schedules. They open shops in the morning, and they go home at night. And for 2004, that level of NPC reactivity was almost unheard of outside of PC RPGs. When we compare the original Fable to the Lost Chapters, the gameplay remains largely identical. New regions like the Northern Wastes introduce slightly more challenging enemy encounters, and new spells like Infernal Wrath gave players more toys to play with. The controller scheme remained unchanged, for better or worse. Then comes Fable Anniversary in 2014, and this is where the gameplay experience diverges significantly. The most important change is the radial menu. Holding the left trigger now brings up a wheel for expressions, magic, and items. Suddenly, the game feels modern. Swapping between spells mid-combat is fluid. This one change makes Anniversary the definitive way to play from a pure gameplay perspective. However, the environments in Anniversary are a point of contention. The Unreal Engine 3 overhaul gave Albion a massive facelift. Textures are sharper, lighting is more dramatic, and draw distances are significantly improved. But in the process, something was lost. The original Fable had a soft watercolor aesthetic, almost like a storybook illustration. Anniversary applies a glossy, almost plastic sheen to everything. Oakvale in the original feels warm and nostalgic. In Anniversary, it feels more like a theme park set. It is technically superior, but artistically, it's debatable. So after reviewing these three versions side by side, what emerges is a trade-off. The original Fable offers the purest artistic vision with controls that were innovative for the time but now start to feel dated. The Lost Chapters gives you the most complete original experience, adding content without altering the fundamental feel. Anniversary offers the smoothest modern gameplay experience thanks to the radial menu and visual upgrades, but it is at the cost of some aesthetic charm and technical stability. But here's the thing about Anniversary that the original Xbox version never had: the modding community. And honestly, this is where the game finds its second life. If you're playing on PC, the modding scene for Anniversary has done some incredible work to fix the game's lingering issues and to expand on its ideas. A lot of these are available on Nexus mods, and they range from essential to transformative. First, you have the visual and performance fixes. One of the biggest complaints about Anniversary is that it lost the original watercolor art style. Mods like Fable Natural Colors or Reshade presets dial back that glossy Unreal Engine 3 look, and they restore the vibrancy of the moody atmosphere that made Albion feel so distinct. There's even a lag fix mod that helps if the game starts chugging in areas like Greatwood. Then you have the gameplay overhauls. If you want the definitive experience, there's a massive mod called FA Redux. This is a total overhaul that rebalances combat, restores cut content, we're talking about items and chests that were left on the cutting room floor, and generally tries to make the game more challenging for veterans. If you're nostalgic for the original Lost Chapters art style, there's even a mod called Fable Anniversary: The Lost Chapter, which painstakingly remodels the NPCs and the hero to look like they did in the original release, restoring things like proper facial animations and scar healing. So while the Anniversary Edition launched with a few rough edges, the community has essentially polished them off and added a ton of new reasons to come back to Albion. It turns a simple remaster into a proper sandbox playground. So in 2026, over 2 decades after the original came out, how does Fable hold up? The answer is surprisingly well. The gameplay is still fun, the combat is simple, one button for melee, one for ranged, one for magic. It may lack some depth, but it's fluid and it's satisfying. The morality system, while it is binary, is more impactful than many modern RPGs that try to hide their mechanics behind gray area writing. When you walk into a town with full horns and a swarm of flies buzzing around your head, you feel like the villain. There are some cracks, such as the world being small. But Albion is not an open world. It's a series of hub zones, connected by loading screens. Compared to the sprawling worlds of modern games, it feels somewhat like a stage play. The story, while charming, is fairly short, since you can blast through the main quest in around 10 hours if you ignore the side content. However, where it excels is in tone. That humor, that distinctly British blend of dry wit, slapstick, and dark satire.
Part in your general direction. Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelt of...
On an interesting side note, the upcoming Fable reboot from Playground Games is actually moving away from the physical morality morphing. They've stated that because their morality system is more subjective, what's evil to one town might be justice to another, they won't be giving you horns or halos. With Playground Games' track record of making really good driving games, I don't doubt that they will make a fun game in the new Fable reboot. But when you remove much of the morality system that the original game was based on, the question came to my mind: will it still be Fable, or will it be Fable in name only? I suppose time will tell. Fable is a monument to creative ambition. It was a game that promised the world and delivered a charming, albeit smaller corner of it. If you want to experience it today, Fable Anniversary is the way to go. Despite the minor graphical quirks and the fact that the PC port needs a bit of community patching, it offers the definitive version of the game. You get the beautiful, if slightly oversaturated, updated visuals, the quality of life controls, and all the content from the Lost Chapters. And then if you add in the mods, you can make it even better. Fable is a time capsule. It captures the early 2000s era of game development, where developers dreamt big even when the hardware couldn't keep up. And what Fable does better than almost any other RPG is to make you feel like you are writing your story. Whether you choose to be the saint who saves the village or the evil villain who destroys it, the game will react to your choices. It might not be the revolution it was advertised in 2004, but it is a classic.
Well, thank you for watching. And I'm curious, did you play Fable growing up? If you did, were you disappointed by some of the features that weren't able to make it into the game, or did you still enjoy it a lot? I love getting your comments, so please be sure to put it down in the comments. I read all of them. And if you like this, please be sure to hit the like button, and also, if you want more content like this, hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one.